My husband, David, is a billionaire. I need to say that upfront, because it's the kind of detail that changes the shape of a story. But it's not the most important thing about him. The most important thing about David, to me, is the way he makes his coffee in the morning. He uses an old, chipped ceramic mug I bought him at a flea market for $2. He says it holds the heat just right. He stands by the kitchen window, looking out at the city waking up, and he's so quiet, so still, you'd never guess he commands boardrooms and moves markets. In those moments, he's just my David. Our love story is a simple one. Really, trapped in a complicated world. I was a curator at a small art gallery, specializing in emerging artists, mostly people of color who couldn't get a foot in the door of the big, sterile, white-walled institutions. He walked in one rainy Tuesday, drenched and looking for a specific piece by a young painter I was championing. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire. He wore jeans and a worn-out Henley. We talked for 2 hours, not about the price of the art, but about the feeling it gave him. He saw what I saw. He saw the soul in it. That's how it started. Simple, honest. We fell in love between canvases and coffee dates. His world of private jets and galas slowly seeped into mine, and my world of poetry slams and community gardens seeped into his. For the most part, we navigated it all with a kind of grace, anchored by the quiet truth of our little apartment, which he refused to leave for some soulless mansion. But there was a part of his world that never quite made room for me. His old university circle. The founders, they called themselves, a group of men he'd gone to school with, all of whom had also become titans of industry. They were old money, old families, old ways of thinking. When they looked at me, they didn't see Lena, the woman who made their friend David laugh in a way they'd never heard before. They saw a black woman, an outsider, a curiosity. I felt their judgment in the little things. The way their wives would ask me where I was really from, their eyes scanning my braids as if they were a foreign artifact. The way they'd steer conversations towards topics they assumed I couldn't possibly understand, like yacht maintenance or the nuances of dressage. I learned to smile, to be polite, to hold David's hand a little tighter and let their smallness roll off my back. David saw it all, of course. A quiet fury would simmer in his eyes, but I'd always squeeze his hand and shake my head, a silent plea. Don't. It's not worth it. So when the invitation arrived, I felt a familiar knot of dread in my stomach. It was for the annual Founders Gala, a charity event that was less about charity and more about reinforcing their own social hierarchy. The invitation was thick, creamy cardstock, the kind of paper that costs more than my weekly groceries used to. Engraved in elegant, swirling gold script were the names, Mr. David Sterling and Mrs. Lena Sterling. "We don't have to go," David said, seeing the look on my face. He was sitting at our small kitchen table, that $2 mug in his hands. "It's for the Children's Hospital, right?" I asked, tracing the letters of my name with my finger. "Mrs. Lena Sterling." It looked so official, so permanent, like I belonged. "That's the excuse," he said with a wry smile. "Mostly it's for Carter Thorne to show off his new wife and his latest acquisition." Carter was the self-appointed leader of the group, a man whose smile never, ever reached his cold, calculating eyes. He'd always treated me with a kind of polite disdain, as if he were tolerating a strange pet David had brought home. I sighed. "We should go. It's one night. I can handle Carter's wife asking me if I've ever been to the Hamptons." David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "You are a goddess of patience and strength," he murmured into my hair. Did I ever tell you that? Every day, I smiled, leaning back into him. But you can keep telling me. For the next 2 weeks, the gala was a quiet hum in the background of our lives. I bought a new dress, a deep sapphire blue that made my skin glow. I felt beautiful in it. I felt strong. I started to think, maybe this time it would be different. Maybe they'd finally see me. Just Lena. The day before the gala, I was working from home, sorting through submissions for a new exhibit. An email popped up in my inbox. The subject line was, "Important update. Founders Gala guest list." It was from Carter Thorne's personal assistant. I opened it with a neutral sense of curiosity. The email was brief and coldly corporate. "Dear David, due to an unforeseen issue with venue capacity, we have had to make some difficult last-minute adjustments to the guest list. We have revised the attendee list to accommodate our core founders and their immediate families, and we will unfortunately be unable to host additional guests at this time. Attached you will find the updated seating chart. We deeply apologize for any inconvenience this may cause and look forward to seeing you tomorrow evening." My heart started to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. It wasn't a mistake. The email was addressed only to David, unable to host additional guests. My blood ran cold. I scrolled down and clicked on the attachment. A PDF of the seating chart loaded. Table after table of names I recognized. And there, at the head table, Table 1, was a single seat reserved for Mr. David Sterling. My name was gone. Erased. I wasn't an immediate family member. I was an additional guest. I was an inconvenience. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. It was so blatant, so cruel. They didn't even have the courage to say it to my face. They just deleted me like a typo. The excuse was so flimsy, so insulting. Venue capacity. The gala was being held in the grand ballroom of the Astoria, a room that could comfortably hold 1,000 people. There were maybe 200 names on their list. A hot, stinging shame washed over me. It was a feeling I knew too well. The feeling of being made to feel small, invisible. It was the feeling of a store clerk following you through the aisles. It was the feeling of someone clutching their purse a little tighter as you walk by. It was the feeling of being told you're so articulate, as if it's a surprise. And now, it was this. My own husband's so-called friends, erasing my existence with a click of a mouse. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear hit the back of my hand. I quickly wiped my eyes, my breath catching in a choked sob. I felt so utterly humiliated. Just then, I heard the key in the front door. David was home early. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't want him to see me like this. I didn't want to ruin his day with their ugliness. "Hey, beautiful," he called out, his voice full of warmth. I finished up early. Thought we could go for a walk before dinner. He walked into the living room and stopped. He can always read my face. The smile vanished from his. "Lena? What is it? What's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, fresh tears welling up. He was by my side in an instant, kneeling in front of me, his hands gently taking mine. His brow was furrowed with concern. "Talk to me, honey. What happened?" My voice was a raw whisper. "The gala. You don't want to go? That's fine. We don't have to. I'll call Carter right now and—" "No," I managed, shaking my head again. I took a deep, shuddering breath and opened my laptop. I turned it towards him, my hand trembling. They uninvited me." David's eyes scanned the email. I watched his face change. The warmth drained away. replaced by something I had only seen a handful of times. It was a stillness so absolute it was terrifying. The muscles in his jaw clenched, and his gaze turned to ice. He read the email, then clicked on the attachment. He stared at the seating chart, his thumb tracing the empty space where my name should have been beside his. He didn't speak for a full minute. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. All I could hear was the frantic beat of my own heart. I expected him to rage, to yell, to curse Carter Thorne's name. He did none of those things. He closed the laptop with a soft, deliberate click. He stood up, walked over to the kitchen counter, and picked up his phone. His movements were precise, economical, like a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice still shaky. He looked at me and his eyes were full of a cold, clear fire. "I'm handling it," he said, his voice dangerously calm. He didn't call Carter. He scrolled through his contacts and pressed a name. He put the phone to his ear. "Michael, it's David Sterling," he said. His tone was level, almost casual. "I have a bit of a last-minute emergency. I need to book the grand ballroom at the Astoria for tomorrow night." "No, the entire ballroom." "Yes, I'm aware of the Founders Gala. That's the point. I need exclusive rights to the venue from PM until close. Whatever their booking fee is, I'll triple it. And I'll make a separate 7-figure donation to the Astoria's Employee Pension Fund. Have the contract sent to my personal email within the hour." My jaw dropped. I stared at him, unable to process what was happening. He was buying the venue out from under them. He listened for a moment, then said, "Excellent, thank you, Michael," and hung up. He didn't even take a breath before he found another contact. Carter Thorne. He pressed the call button and put the phone on speaker, placing it on the kitchen island. He looked at me, a silent message passing between us. "We're in this together." The phone rang twice before Carter answered, his voice oozing a false, syrupy charm. "David, my man, getting excited for tomorrow? I was just telling Amelia how much we're looking forward to seeing you, Carter," David said, and the name was a shard of ice. "I just received an email from your assistant." There was a slight pause. "Ah, yes," Carter said, his voice a little tighter. "A terrible shame about the capacity issue. We're just squeezed to the rafters. You understand?" "I'm sure. The thing about capacity, Carter," David said, his voice low and even, "is that it's often determined by the person who signs the check." Another pause, this one longer. "I'm not sure I follow, David. Let me make it clear for you," David said, leaning against the counter, the picture of calm authority. "I just spoke with the Astoria's event director. It seems there was a clerical error with the booking. A much larger private event has taken precedence. My event, to be precise. I've booked the entire grand ballroom for a private function tomorrow evening." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the gears in Carter's mind grinding to a halt. "You... what?" Carter stammered, the charm completely gone from his voice. "You can't do that. Our deposits are paid. Our invitations are out. This is the Founders Gala." "It was the Founders Gala," David corrected him gently. "Now it's a block of time on a calendar that I own. Your deposits, I'm told, will be fully refunded. As for your guests, I'd suggest you find a new venue. Perhaps your country club has a squash court available." "This is insane, David. What the hell is this about?" Carter's voice was rising, a note of panic creeping in. And then, David's voice dropped even lower, but every word was a hammer blow. "This is about an email, Carter. This is about a seating chart. This is about the fact that you and your little club of insecure relics thought you could erase my wife. You thought you could disrespect her and by extension, disrespect me, and I would just sit at your table and smile." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You see, you seem to have a misunderstanding about who my immediate family is. Lena isn't an additional guest. She's my entire world. And you don't get access to my world. Not anymore." "David, listen. It was a mistake," Carter sputtered, the desperation palpable. "A misunderstanding. The assistant. She must have. We can fix this. Of course. Lena is welcome. We'll send a car for her. We'll put her name in lights. If you want." I watched David's face. There was no triumph, no gloating, only a profound, weary sadness. "The time for fixing it is over, Carter. The thing you and your friends have never understood is that my wife's dignity is not for sale. It can't be bought with a seat at your table. And my loyalty can't be bought either." He picked up the phone. "I'll send you a list," David said, his voice final. "A list of people who will not be welcome at my event tomorrow night. Your name will be at the top. If you or any of your founders tried to set foot on Astoria property, security will be happy to escort you out. Have a good evening." And with that, he ended the call. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. It was full of air. I looked at David, who seemed to deflate slightly, the icy calm receding, replaced by the familiar warmth I loved. He looked tired. He came over and sank onto the couch next to me, pulling me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, and this time, the tears that came were not of shame or humiliation. They were tears of overwhelming, staggering love. He held me, just held me, stroking my hair as I cried. He didn't just turn the tables. I whispered into his shirt. He flipped the whole damn restaurant over. He chuckled softly, a low rumble in his chest. "They needed a lesson in manners." "That wasn't a lesson," I said, looking up at him. "That was a masterclass." He smiled, a real, gentle smile, and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "No one erases you, Lena. Not on my watch. Not ever." The next 24 hours were a blur. David's team, a small army of hyper-efficient people I barely knew existed, descended. While I was still processing the whiplash of it all, a new event was being born. "So we have the most exclusive ballroom in the city, a full staff, a world-class kitchen, and an open bar," David said to me that night, as we sat with takeout cartons of pad thai on our coffee table. "What do you want to do with it?" I looked at him, a slow smile spreading across my face. An idea, bold and bright, began to form in my mind. "I don't want their party, David. I want our party." And so we planned it. We didn't invite titans of industry or old money heirs. I spent the next day on the phone. I called the young, struggling painter whose work had first brought David into my gallery. I called the poet who hosted the open mic night downtown. I called the director of the inner city youth arts program I volunteered for, and told her to bring all her senior students who were dreaming of a creative future. I called friends, real friends, people who had celebrated our love from day one. David called his people, too, not the founders, but the young, hungry entrepreneurs he was mentoring, the ones with brilliant ideas but no connections. Many of them people of color who had fought twice as hard for half the recognition. Our guest list wasn't a list of who's who. It was a list of who they should be. The next evening, I stood in front of the mirror, zipping up my sapphire blue dress. It felt different now. It wasn't armor anymore. It was a celebration. David came and stood behind me, handsome and timeless in a simple black suit. He didn't wear a tie. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine in the reflection. "More than ready," I said. When we walked into the grand ballroom of the Astoria, it took my breath away. It was the same opulent room, with its crystal chandeliers and gold leaf ceilings, but it felt completely different. There was no stiff string quartet. Instead, a live jazz trio played in the corner, filling the air with soul and life. The tables weren't arranged in a rigid hierarchy. They were scattered, encouraging people to mingle, and the people, our people, they were magnificent. Young artists in paint-splattered jeans stood talking with tech prodigies in hoodies. Poets debated with community organizers. There was so much laughter, so much energy, so much joy. The room was a vibrant tapestry of every color, every background, every dream imaginable. No one was asking anyone where they were really from. They were asking what they were passionate about. I saw the young painter, eyes wide as she took in the room. She came up to me, her voice full of awe. "Lena, I've never seen anything like this. I feel like I'm in a movie." "You're not in a movie," I told her, squeezing her hand. "You're in the room where it happens, and you belong here." Later, David and I stood on a small balcony overlooking the party. The sound of conversation and laughter drifted up to us. A beautiful, harmonious noise. "Look at them," I said softly, my heart full to bursting. "This is so much better than their stuffy gala. This was always the party I wanted to be at," David said, slipping his arm around my waist. "I just didn't know how to throw it until you showed me." I leaned my head on his shoulder, watching the beautiful, chaotic, wonderful scene below. I thought about Carter Thorne and his friends, probably gathered in some dark-paneled room, complaining about the injustice of it all. I felt a fleeting sense of pity for them. They had built their world on exclusion, on making sure people like me felt small. And in doing so, they had made their own world so incredibly tiny. They had tried to erase me from a piece of paper. But David hadn't just written my name back in. He had taken their paper, torn it to shreds, and given me a whole new book to write. Our own story in that moment, standing there wrapped in my husband's arms. I wasn't Mrs. Lena Sterling, the billionaire's wife. I wasn't the woman who was uninvited from the gala. I was just Lena, and for the first time, in a room that big and grand, I felt completely and utterly seen. I belonged, not to a guest list or a social circle, but to this life we had built. A life where the most valuable thing wasn't money or power, but the simple, unshakable truth of a man who would buy the whole damn room just to make sure his wife felt at home.